Alright, so we're working on Morgan here. Gonna do a big change, so you can see she's got quite a bit of hair. A lot of length. Gonna work her into more of a kind of tight, tailored bob shape. So just showing off the sectioning here. So just got a kind of rectangular panel through the top. This sits just above the parietal ridge. Each side is just pinned up. Work down from the crown area to just on top of the ear on both sides. And then through the back, we've just taken a middle section vertically. I'm just showing what my sectioning is going to be. Just taking vertical sections, working from one side to the other. So first section, starting at the top, you can see my finger angle is kind of diving down into the nape. Wanting to create a graduated shape that works shorter into the nape and longer as it works up to the head. So building up weight as we move up the head shape. Working down into the nape now. Keeping my fingers really tight to the head. Section 2. Vertical directly next to section 1. Keeping the hair groomed and cleaned out of the way. Section 2 gets over directed straight backwards, using section 1 as the guide, and working down in the same manner. Really important as you get into the nape to make sure your fingers are sitting close to the head shape here. Section 3, same thing, over directed back to section 2. Trying to keep everything really flat, really square to the back of the head. I don't want a dramatic amount of length around behind the ear. I just want it to get slightly longer. So we kind of skipped ahead here. But everything's the same. Everything getting directed straight backwards. Working with my fingers angled down to the nape. From long to short, building that graduated shape. With these last couple sections, you can really see what the over direction does, working straight backwards. So I'm not over-directing each section to the previous, just pulling everything straight back to the wall behind me. That keeps my horizontal shape very square, while my vertical shape would be more triangular, because it's shorter at the nape, longer as it works up. Kind of showing that finished result on that side. You can see that kind of buildup of weight. Side 2. Process is the same, but with working any graduation through the back, finger angle will slightly change. So now my fingers are working down, I'm pointing to the nape instead of working from my fingertips into the palm of my hand. It's just easier to do this. It's easier on the body. You move the head a little bit better, working with your fingers down on the right side or the left side if you're a left-handed person. It would be very difficult for me to work with my fingers up on this side. Same process, a little bit different view. You can see my fingers working, pointing down towards the nape. So I'm always kind of keeping myself in check when I'm working and just making sure that I'm maintaining a consistent finger angle, consistent over direction, consistent elevation. Those are the controls that are going to allow me to create something that is very form-fitting and specific to her. skipped ahead again. Really, now you can see the over direction, just pulling it straight backwards. With the finger angle remaining the same, still getting shorter as it goes into the nape. So last section, all of it straight back. Clean, consistent sectioning, everything the same size every time. Can really move the head around, working in that area to avoid the shoulder. So really just making sure that everything's clean right there. Just cleaning up any loose hairs. Just tidying up a bit. See the balance there, the weight line. So now we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to work the perimeter outline in the back first while it's wet. The reason I choose to do that is because I built the graduation and the amount of hair at the bottom is pretty small. So I wanted to create a really strong line, and I think you get the most control whenever you're working with wet hair. So just worked a curved line from the middle up to just behind the ear, doing the same thing on the opposite side. So just using the tips of the scissors and just drawing in the line that I want to see. So they're not going to be exactly the same on both sides. I wanted a little bit of asymmetry and just something that kind of was a little bit different and really followed the contour of her neck. So it's okay to do these kind of detail things whenever the hair's wet. You get more control that way, honestly. It's just sometimes, based on the technique, it might be better to do it when it's dry. So working into the front, just taking a horizontal section and just connecting that line that we cut in the back through the front. So I tapped above the ear just to release a little bit of tension. Really just aiming it kind of right at the corner of the mouth into the cheekbone area. So same thing. Just taking a horizontal section, letting the hair fall naturally, and just cutting along that guideline. What I love about this is that we're not using any elevation, so there's a internal disconnection from the graduation in the back, while there's still an external disconnection through the line in the front. So last little bit on that side. Really just making sure that I'm staying consistent, tapping above the ear just to release any tension so there's no hole or jump there. And just working that line straight through, letting it sit right on the cheekbone. Just really clean, consistent work. Okay, so now we go to the top of that panel, take a horizontal section. Now we're going to connect it to the graduation in the back, but we're going to layer it instead. So I'm just showing what my guide's going to be and what my cutting line will be. So taking that horizontal section, elevating it straight up, grabbing a little bit of that longest graduation from the back and connecting a square shape through the top of the panel. So now we're going to release some of that weight that we put in by creating a line. So just pulling everything straight up, connecting it through to the length of the graduation in the back, and creating a new guideline. Section 2 just below it. Now we're going to bring everything straight up into this point, and we're going to do this until we run out of hair. Now the hair at the bottom won't reach. So in the back we've got graduation, and then through the exterior there's a line, and then through the interior here is a different technique, a very, very strong, really high elevation layer. So that's really going to diffuse the edges along the front hairline while creating a lot more movement as well. So you can see how strong the elevation is. And there's really not any hair being cut off at this point. So it didn't disrupt the exterior line at all, but created more movement through the interior. Same thing on the opposite side. Horizontal section, working through connecting to the line in the back. Same process. Last one, and dropping all that hair, touching above the ear. And just connecting it through to the line in the back. Really aiming the length and the line to sit right underneath the round of the cheekbone. That's what we want to accentuate. Alright, so moving on, same thing. Horizontal section at the top of that panel, connecting through to the graduation in the back, via layering through the front, keeping everything really flat. We will just repeat that process all the way through. Elevating everything up and just removing any little kind of bits of hair that are still left from the length on the bottom. But again, when we comb this down, get this really nice connection to the exterior line while there's a disconnection through the interior of the haircut. So working into the top now, so we've taken that rectangular section on the top and we've created 3 independent panels through the front. So I'm going to take a section that goes across that panel in the back of it and elevate it straight up and cut a square line. I'm going to cut it pretty short. Now this will become my fringe. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut this line and then we're going to over direct everything in front of it backwards to that point. So it's going to get slightly longer as it works towards the face. You put that layer on top. It does a couple of things. Sometimes people with layers, or with fringes, they aren't allowed to wear things necessarily the way they want because they have cowlicks or growth patterns, stuff that would kind of inhibit them from wearing something that was a very blunt fringe. Morgan has a growth pattern in the front of her hair, but she did want a fringe, and so what we decided was to layer it. So what that does is it allows the hair to move around a little bit more, so it doesn't have to look so blunt, but can be very kind of loose and fluid. And when we go in and do the refinement, then we can really strengthen the lineup. So panel 2, same thing. We're just going to make it a little bit longer. So starting at the back of the second panel in the middle, just elevating the hair straight up, cutting a square line. And again, what we're going to do is just over direct everything backwards to that point. So you've got the front one with short in the back in the front panel, longer in the front. Second panel, shorter in the back, longer in the front. It's going to lay over the fringe that you've already got. And then we'll do the same thing on the third panel. So we're creating 3 kind of independent sections of layering that will sit in the fringe, which will help allow the hair to kind of move around a little bit, but also give it some support for the style that we want. So last panel through the back, cutting it a little bit longer. So each one is completely disconnected from the one in front of it. Over directing everything backwards to that cutting line. what we'll see when we drop this, comb it forward, is that it all just kind of flows together into that fringe area. So just kind of examining the haircut, taking a look, using some of the styling gel. I really like this as like a blow dry enhancer. So what it'll do is really help to smooth the hair out. It gives it a little bit of hold, just enough to kind of allow the hair to kind of behave for me. Just using a flat wrapping technique, so keeping the hair very small, tight to the head. Utilizing the blow dryer without a nozzle to kind of diffuse the hair out and allow it to dry a little bit faster. Just keeping everything really tight and small, not using a lot of lifting or leafing or anything like that. I really want like a very form-fitting shape that accentuates the haircut. The haircut is the style in this, not my blow dry. So working into the back, just those short little hairs, making sure that I'm getting those down. So into the refinement stage. So just moving that hair from the top and then working in around the face and just kind of carving out a little bit of a C shape that sits around the orbital bone there. Really just open the eye up. So not disrupting any of the length through the bottom, but just kind of creating a little bit of an opening through the front. Open up the face a bit more, draw attention to the eyes and the cheekbones, which is really what the point of the haircut was. Just using the tips of the scissors, cutting a little bit at a time. Working into the perimeter outline. So pretty happy with it the way that it was, so I don't need to do a ton of refining, but I am just taking the points of the scissors and just kind of chipping into it a little bit. So I just want to soften the edge so it's not quite so strong. Picking up any little kind of areas and gaps that there might have been through, just the hair moving around. It's hard to keep things 100% consistent all the time, so you have to go in and refine. But I'm not trying to do any correction with this, so I'm just really personalizing the haircut. Just attention to detail is what it is. This is what makes your haircuts kind of sing, I think. A lot of times people can rush through this process, but if you can slow down and really personalize it for your client or your model or whatever it is, then you're going to add a lot more value to the service. Same thing on the opposite side, just chipping in around the hairline. Really just want to open that up, kind of get some of those unnecessary hairs out of the way. I'm a firm believer in that if it doesn't belong, that we should just take it away. So it's not the same as the other side, it's different. The shape is different, the way that I'm going about it is slightly different, just kind of working a little bit higher up into the hairline in the front. But that's because I feel like that's what really needed to happen. So instead of using like a trimmer on her face, I'm just using the scissors, kind of like a scissor over skin technique, just to remove some of those shorter hairs. It'll make the grow out a little softer, a little bit more feminine. Refining the line on the opposite side. So just using the tips of the scissors. Even though I'm cutting flat, I'm still just using the very tips there. Alright, so we're going to go in and start point cutting into the layering. So starting through the longest panel of layers in the back, just elevating the hair, lifting up where it was cut and just pointing into that strong shape. So you can really see the shape there, just pointing into it, soften it a bit, create a little bit more movement. I'm just going to gradually work forward and kind of blend those areas together. So the areas that are disconnected where it was shorter and then it got a little bit longer, just kind of blending those lines, blurring them out a little bit. I think just allows the haircut to kind of have a little bit more movement. But again, not going crazy here. Not going in and disrupting the original technique that I used. Not changing the shape at all, just slightly softening the interior of the haircut. So here's the fun part, pushing the hair down onto the forehead and then going through with the tips of the scissors and kind of removing that excess length that we had from over directing the hair back in that first panel. Again, you can see the kind of growth pattern that she's got there. I think a lot of people would be scared by that, but I kind of like it. I think it adds a little bit of something special to the haircut, just to have that little split and kind of jump in the hairline. But if you take the fringe short enough, so you don't have to worry about it jumping too much. So just go in, chipping in, kind of random. We wanted it to have a very kind of random, diffused look, not super blunt and clean. So just going in with the tips of the scissors, opening up the face a bit more every time. And we've edited this down, but it took a little while to do just to get it exactly right. So working into the sides, we had that length at the bottom, so just kind of going in and pointing them out a bit, using the finishing texture spray. Her hair is very fine, and so if I wanted to have any kind of grit or kind of style to it, this is a great product for it because it's going to kind of thicken the hair up a bit, give it a bit more kind of feel, and just it makes it feel like there's a little bit more hair to kind of move around and mess with. Plus it's got a good hold, but it's also movable enough that we could spray it for days and then shake it out and we wouldn't have any buildup or anything. But it really just made the hair kind of texture up a bit more, kind of sit a little bit higher, and it allows me to go in and kind of piece it out with my fingers and just create like a different look. Here's kind of the end result in the chair. Just a tight little bob that sits, kind of accentuates the cheekbones, opens up the face a bit more. Just a fun modern cut. Hope you guys like it.